Listen, I want to thank everyone for being here. A lot of information. The first thing I want to calm everyone down and make sure that they don't panic about the 1940 U.S. Census images. This is what this webinar is about. We're going to cover what information you're going to find in the census, and then the fact that the census has only images when it's released on April 2nd, 2012. There will be no index. We will cover that fact and the reason why. Most of the time that we will spend over the next 2 bullet points locating the 1940 U.S. Census images, what you will need to have beforehand, and also using the one-step website developed by Steve Morse to find the images that you need on the 1940 U.S. Census. We will also discuss other 1940 U.S. Census resources as well. Let's get started. And this is going to be a lot of fun. I have been very focused on 1940 U.S. Census, and I want you to come along with me, and let's talk about what information are you going to find on the 1940 census. Now, the census images, the date and the time to remember are Monday, April 2nd, 2012, 9 a.m. Eastern. You know that it would have been April 1st is the legal date, the 72-year mark, when the government is allowed to release those images, but that is a Sunday, and National Archives is not open on a Sunday, thus we have April 2nd. And this is the link that you want to write down. This is the link where you will access those images on April 2nd, 1940census.archives.gov. I'm going to go ahead and navigate out there. And this is what it looks like now. This is just a holding spot. They have a video, which is a movie that was used in movie theaters for the 1940 census, and that is what that looks like. Back to our slideshow here. This is the 1940 Federal Census Population Schedule form. You can actually get a copy of this. I'll put the link up in a minute, but this is freely available on the National Archives and Records Administration site. You will notice familiar questions. You may notice some that are new, and we will cover that in a minute as well. But this is where you can get the form. Is at archives.gov, which is the National Archives site. I will go ahead and click on this, and it may very well open in Internet Explorer for me, or it may not open at all, but we'll just leave that be. But this is, you can go actually to National Archives, go ahead and search for 1940 census. It is there. I believe Jeff said that they will have a copy of the form as well with Legacy Family Tree. You will be able to get a copy of that form if you do need it. Now, there are some new questions besides the typical questions asked in the 1930 census. One that's very important for me is the name of the informant. I think it was assumed in the past that the informant was always the head of household. But I have learned as a genealogist not to rely upon that. That you could have a language barrier, so maybe it was the wife who was the informant. Now the 1940 U.S. Census will specify who the informant is for the information. Highest school grade completed. Before we've seen questions such as can read or write. This takes that to a different level. This is very important coming out of the Great Depression in terms of education. And also this one is golden. This is like two censuses in one. By asking for the 1935 place of residence, you are basically getting an off-year, a mid-decade census. Why? Well, the government wanted to know what the migration patterns were with the country due to the Great Depression. And many people were going to far parts of the country from where they were just to find work. This is a way of tracking that. But this is golden. Also keep in mind that around this time, many state censuses, which were, I know in New York, I think they were on the 2s and the 5s, those years, those went away in the 20s and the 30s. So this is really, really neat information, very important, and this is like the bonus question. Now, sampling. Sampling was used for the first time in the 1940 U.S. Census. If you don't know what sampling is still used in the census and has been expanded. It's where they will select at random a subset of respondents and ask them a different set of questions, a set of supplemental questions. So now, are your family members or ancestors going to be selected? Well, if they appear on line 14 or line 29 of the 1940 census, then they were given questions 35 through 50, which is a set of 16 questions that everyone else did not get. So that is important. I know that people probably are taking bets right now. Come on line 14, come on line 29 for grandma. But you have no way of knowing. But those are the lines that actually will get the additional questions. Now, what are those questions? Questions are birthplace of parents. Where was your father born? Where was your mother born? Native language. What language did you speak at home during your earliest childhood? Veteran status. They asked whether you were a veteran. What wars did you fight in? Now, if the respondent was a child on line 14 or 29, they then asked, is your father a veteran? What war did he fight in? Social Security. Realize that this is part of the New Deal coming out of the Great Depression. The first Social Security check was cut on January 31st, 1940. So they wanted to know, do you have a Social Security card? Have Social Security deductions been taken out of your wages? That information is part of the supplemental questions. And then they asked, what is your normal occupation and industry? And by normal, what we mean is, what were you trained in? Where is your skill set? It doesn't mean that you're necessarily working in that industry or occupation right now. Again, the government wanted to track the displacement of workers and the effect of the Great Depression. For women, women were asked, how many previous marriages have you had, and what was the age at your first marriage? Also, they were asked the number of children that were born alive. This is very different than the past. It doesn't mean how many are still living. They wanted to know how many children were born alive, and stillbirths were not counted in this count. Believe it or not, there were actually some rejected questions. These were questions, supplemental questions, that they were going to ask. Do you own a Bible? Are you over 6 feet tall? What is your hair color? Do you own a burial plot? How many dogs do you own? So it would have been interesting, but obviously there was no room for these questions, and also you have to wonder, why did the government want to know these things? One other area that we have seen, you will see expanded, is the use of codes. Coding is a way on a census to get a lot of information in a small place. Now, we'll take our first look here at the one-step site, but the one-step site has set out all the occupation codes and the miscellaneous codes. Let's go ahead and take a look over here. These are deciphering the occupation codes, and it shows basically what column F in the 1940 census looked like here. And if you wanted to, you just plug in what the codes are, and you could go ahead, and here are 224 as messengers, errand boys, etc. It is, there's a publication here you can link on, which will explain all the codes. But this is a nice tool if you do have codes, and before it's been sort of arcane to try and decipher them. So that is a nice feature there. Go back to our slideshow. Also, the miscellaneous codes are listed over on the one-step site. And basically, relationship to head of household, if it's number 3, parent, number 5, other relative, etc. So there are a lot here. So hopefully you will have a lot of codes on the census that you are, image that you find on the 1940 census. Okay, our next part here is, and I can't emphasize this enough, I still see out on Facebook and social media people saying, I can't wait to search for my great-grandparents in the name index. Well, there is no index on the 1940 U.S. Census. Images only. Just images, no index. This is the way I believe the 1930 census was, and it does take several weeks and months to develop an index. Realize that no one is seeing these images ahead of time. I can't make that any more clear. People think that, maybe Steve Morse has gotten his eyes on the images, or certain people. have the images available, even family search. Not true. The first time anyone will see this set of images is April 2nd, 9 a.m. Eastern. Now, why is there no index? Of course, if you have no images available, you can't create an index. The index will take several weeks at least to get a rudimentary index started. And one thing that I want to come back here is talk about, and we will talk about extensively at the end of this, is there is an opportunity for all of you to volunteer to index the 1940 U.S. Census images. That is a partnership with FamilySearchArchives.com, which is hosting the images, and FindMyPast.com. They have banded together to make sure that access to the images for the 19 U.S. Census are free and that the index is free. And you can do your part and understand that 1940s was really marked by a spirit of volunteerism. What with World War II coming out of Great Depression, and people pitched in. There were scrap drives, recycling, etc., and there's no reason why the genealogy community and the greater public can't band together and do some volunteer indexing. There are 132 million names to be indexed in the 1940 U.S. Census. At the end of the presentation, I'll tell you more on how to do that. So, first thing you're going to need is a 1940 address for the people that you hope to find in the 1940 U.S. Census. Let's talk about some of the sources, and it's important that you maybe write these down, and then between now and 26 days from now, start figuring out who do I want to find and what is their 1940 address, especially as of April 1st, 1940. Address books. Family has any old address books sitting around? Good source. Census records. The 1930 census may have the address given that your family didn't move, but also keep in mind we're talking a great migration period during the Great Depression to look for employment. So it's likely that they may have moved, and you may not find the information you need. Family members. This is the one that I like the most, is interviewing family members and finding out, where did my great-grandparents live in 1940. Letters and diaries. I know that not everyone used return addresses, but you may have old envelopes with addresses. Diaries may actually people may write down where they lived or where so-and-so lived. You can at least get the town and the county if you can't get an exact address. Obituaries are great. I know that they don't do this anymore, but back then obituaries, maybe not in the 1940s, but funerals were still held at home. Very often an obituary would say the funeral will start at the home of so-and-so at this address and proceed to the church or proceed to the burial plot. Newspapers, announcements about engagements, graduations, weddings, any of that information is likely to have addresses. Organizational newsletters. I don't know if you realize, but a lot of businesses, especially aerospace, not aerospace, but the airplane industries, a lot of heavy industries, big companies like General Electric, they had newsletters that they put out every month, and they often had addresses for people. Many of these you can still find under Google Books or out on Google. Passenger lists, naturalization records would indicate where the address to where they were going. Phone books. I just found out today that I believe that the 1940 Manhattan, New York phone book is going to be digitized in time for the census release. Photographs. You may have addresses on the back of photographs. Vital records. Death certificates especially are great for addresses. They will list where the person died, where the informant lives, where the funeral director is located, where the doctor lives, birth records, marriage records as well. And also one that is going to be very useful are the World War II draft registrations from 1942. This is within a 2-year period of 1940, and I will show you in a minute that I actually have used this for one of my great-grandparents, and that is the address of record for 1940 that I was able to use. And also, again, I think this slide is out of order, but you can volunteer for indexing, and we will go through where that is towards the end. I do want to emphasize that again. So let's get started. This is the fun part. Let's say that you know where your grandparents, your parents are in the